Scotland and Northern Ireland through Thursday night, but eventually they ease away, apart from the far north and northwest. Clear skies then for many, and a cold start again on Friday, but widespread sunny skies are expected on Friday, Saturday and into Sunday. It will also feel warm.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
And welcome once again to On the Money, where we're focused on the UK's cost of living crisis, helping you to beat the squeeze. I'm Liam Halligan, and for the next hour, we'll be talking about Rishi Sunak's spring statement. It's a week from now, and it's set to be the most important financial statement the House of Commons has seen for more than a decade. We'll be talking specifically about defence spending. Can the Chancellor afford not to spend more on defence, given events in Ukraine? All that and much more on the money after the GB News headlines with Tamsin Roberts.
Liam, thank you. Good afternoon. It's 1 o'clock here in the GB newsroom. British Iranian aid worker Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe has reportedly left Iran after being detained in the country for 6 years. The lawyer for Miss Zaghari-Ratcliffe told Reuters news agency she and fellow British Iranian Anousheh Ashuri were released this morning. Earlier, Labour MP Tulip Siddiq said Miss Zaghari-Ratcliffe was also at the airport in Tehran. Well, she was arrested in April in 2016 and later convicted by an Iranian court for plotting to overthrow the government. She strongly denies the allegations. Speaking in the Commons, Deputy Labour leader Angela Rayner urged the Deputy Prime Minister to make sure other British nationals still trapped in Iran be brought home.
So will the Minister commit to a review of these cases to understand what more could have been done by the British Government to secure releases, and whether the lazy comments of the Prime Minister worsened the situation?
Deputy Prime Minister.
I can tell the Honourable Lady, having worked for 2 years with the concerted diplomatic effort led by the Prime Minister, that we have done absolutely everything that we can. She shouldn't give succour to the despotic regime that detained our nationals in Iran or around the world by suggesting it's anyone else's responsibility other than theirs.
Parts of a possible peace deal between Russia and Ukraine are close to being agreed as negotiations to end the conflict continue. It follows continued shelling by Moscow overnight, with air raid sirens heard in several cities across Ukraine. Meanwhile, authorities in the besieged city Mariupol say Russian forces have reportedly taken control of a hospital with over 400 civilians, patients and staff inside. This morning, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said some aspects for agreements with Ukraine were close to being agreed. In the last hour, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said peace negotiations must lead to a fair deal for his country.
We can and must hold negotiations about a just and fair peace for Ukraine, about real security guarantees that will work. This is an ambitious task, a difficult one. This is a long way, but I am sure that we Ukrainians can do this. We Ukrainians can win and return to peace we all so strive for.
The Prime Minister says there's no way Ukraine will join NATO anytime soon. It comes as President Zelensky says NATO has no intention of accepting his country. The UK's Defence Secretary Ben Wallace is meeting with his NATO counterparts today to discuss Russia's invasion. Earlier, Boris Johnson said the UK will continue to support Ukraine.
The decision about the future of Ukraine has got to be for the Ukrainian people and for Volodymyr Zelensky as their elected leader. And the most important thing is that Putin's aggression, his absolutely barbaric attacks on Ukraine, should stop, and they should not be seen to have succeeded.
The journalist who protested on Russian state TV against the invasion of Ukraine said she is extremely concerned for her safety. Marina Ovsyannikova ran onto the set of the network's live news show last week, holding a sign reading, "Don't believe propaganda, they're lying to you." She says she has no plans to flee Russia and hopes she won't face criminal charges. The Ministry of Defence says Moscow's invasion has been stalled by a lack of manoeuvrability, which has been exploited by Ukrainian forces. In its latest defence update, the MOD says Russian forces are struggling to overcome the challenges posed by Ukraine's terrain, adding the country's destruction of its own bridges has also played a key role in stalling Russia's advance. It says Russia's failure to gain control of the air has further limited their options. Boris Johnson has told the leader of the United Arab Emirates they need to work together to stabilise global energy markets. The Prime Minister's spokesman confirmed he and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan met this afternoon in Abu Dhabi. His trip to the Gulf state and neighbour Saudi Arabia is part of efforts to wean the UK off Russian oil and gas. New Zealand will reopen its borders to most tourists from the beginning of May, 2 years after closing them during the pandemic. It follows the relaxing of travel rules here, with Heathrow Airport no longer requiring passengers to wear face masks from today, and Transport Secretary Grant Shapps confirming passenger locator forms will end on Friday. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now, let's get back to On the Money.
And coming up on The Money today, with Rishi Sunak's statement a week away, we begin to analyse the tough choices facing the Chancellor. This Russia-Ukraine conflict and related East-West economic war has sent food and fuel prices spiralling. What can Sunak do to help hard-pressed families and firms? And defence spending's been on a downward trend since the mid-1950s. Is that now set to reverse in light of renewed military conflict in Europe? We'll be talking more about so-called non-fungible tokens, or NFTs. What are they? Well, they're kind of digital art and imagery, investment in which is a growing financial craze. Plus, we'll be talking to families struggling with smart meter bills. And today's in-depth Money Talks interview is with a corporate headhunter turned boardroom vigilante. Monica Lagerkrantz is certainly a force to be reckoned with. Stand by for a studio encounter later in the show. And I want to hear from you, your experiences and concerns about the cost of living squeeze. Should we spend more on defence? With the health service and so many families struggling? Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet @gbnews. So stay with us. This is GB News. I'm Liam Halligan. You're on the money. Before we get going with the show, we're going to head over live to Washington, D.C. as the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky addresses Congress.
Give up. and we have not even thought about it for a second. Just like many other cities and communities in our beautiful country, which found themselves in the worst war since World War II. I have the honor to greet you on behalf of the Ukrainian people, brave and freedom-loving people who for 8 years have been resisting the Russian aggression. Those who give their best sons and daughters to stop this full-scale Russian invasion. Right now, the destiny of our country is being decided. The destiny of our people, whether Ukrainians will be free, whether they will be able to preserve their democracy. Russia has attacked not just us, not just our land, not just our cities. It went on a brutal offensive against our values, basic human values. It threw tanks and planes against our freedom, against our right to live freely in our own country, choosing our own future, against our desire for happiness, against our national dreams, just like the same dreams you have, you Americans, just like anyone else in the United States. I remember your national memorial in Rushmore, the faces of your prominent presidents, those who laid the foundation of the United States of America as it is today, democracy, independence, freedom, and care for everyone, for every person, for everyone who works diligently, who lives honestly, who respects the law. We in Ukraine want the same for our people. All that is normal part of your own life. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, Americans, in your great history, you have pages that would allow you to understand Ukrainians, understand us now, when you need it right now, when we need you right now. Remember Pearl Harbor, terrible morning of December 7, 1941, when your sky was black from the planes attacking you. Just remember September the 11th, a terrible day in 2001 when evil tried to turn your cities, independent territories, in battlefields, when innocent people were attacked from air. Yes, just like no one else expected it. You could not stop it. Our country experience the same every day, right now, at this moment, every night, for 3 weeks now. Various Ukrainian cities, Odessa and Kharkiv, Chernihiv and Sumy, Zhytomyr and Lviv, Mariupol and Dnipro. Russia has turned the Ukrainian sky into a source of death for thousands of people. Russian troops have already fired nearly 1,000 missiles at Ukraine, countless bombs. They use drones to kill us with precision. This is a terror that Europe has not seen for 80 years, and we are asking for a reply, for an answer to this terror from the whole world. Is this a lot to ask for, to create a no-fly zone over Ukraine to save people? Is this too much to ask? Humanitarian no-fly zone, something that that Russia would not be able to terrorize our free cities. If this is too much to ask, we offer an alternative. You know what kind of defense systems we need, S-300 and other similar systems. You know how much depends on the battlefield, on the ability to use aircraft, powerful, strong air aviation to protect our people, our freedom, our land, aircraft that can help Ukraine, help Europe. And you know that they exist and you have them, but they are on earth, not in the Ukrainian sky. They do not defend our people. I have a dream. These words are known to each of you. Today I can say, I have a need. I need to protect our sky. I need your decision, your help, which means exactly the same you feel when you hear the words, I have a dream. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, Ukraine is grateful to the United States for its overwhelming support, for everything that your government and your people have done for us, for weapons and ammunition, for training, for finances, for leadership in the free world, which helps us to pressure the aggressor economically. I'm grateful to President Biden for his personal involvement, for his sincere commitment to the defense of Ukraine and democracy all over the world. I am grateful to you for the resolution which recognizes all those who commit crimes against Ukraine, against the Ukrainian people as war criminals. However, now, it is true, in the darkest time for our country, for the whole Europe, I call on you to do more. New packages of sanctions are needed constantly, every week, until the Russian military machine stops. Restrictions are needed for everyone on whom this unjust regime is based. We propose that the United States sanctions all politicians in the Russian Federation who remain in their offices and do not cut ties with those who are responsible for the aggression against Ukraine, from State Duma's members to the last official who has lack of morale to break the state terror. All American companies must leave Russia from their market, leave their market immediately, because it is flooded with our blood. Ladies and gentlemen, members of Congress, please take the lead. If you have companies in your districts who finance the Russian military machine leaving business in Russia, you should put pressure. I am asking to make sure that the Russians do not receive a single penny that they use to destroy people in Ukraine. The destruction of our country, the destruction of Europe. All American ports should be closed for Russian goods. Peace is more important than income, and we have to defend this principle in the whole world. We already became part of the anti-war coalition, a big anti-war coalition that unites many countries, dozens of countries, those who reacted to, in principle, to President Putin's decision to invade our country. But we need to move on and do more. We need to create new tools to respond quickly and stop the war, the full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine, which began on February 24th. And it would be fair if it ended in a day, in 24 hours, that evil would be punished immediately. Today, the world does not have such tools. The war of the past have prompted our predecessors to create institutions that should protect us from war, but they unfortunately don't work. We see it, you see it, so we need new ones, new institutions, new alliances, and we offer them. We propose to create an association, U24, United for Peace, a union of responsible countries that have the strength and consciousness to stop conflicts immediately, provide all the necessary assistance in 24 hours, if necessary, even weapons, if necessary, sanctions, humanitarian support, political support, finances, everything you need to keep the peace and quickly save the world, to save lives. In addition, such association, such union could provide assistance to those who are experiencing natural disasters, man-made disasters, who fell victims to humanitarian crisis or epidemics. Remember how difficult it was for the world to do the simplest thing, just to give vaccines. Vaccines against COVID to save lives, to prevent new strains. The world spent months, years doing things like that, much faster, to make sure there are no human losses, no victims. Ladies and gentlemen, Americans, if such alliance would exist today, that is U24, we would be able to save thousands of lives in our country. In many countries of the world, those who need peace, those who suffer inhumane destruction. I ask you to watch one video of what the Russian troops did in our country, in our land. We have to stop it. We must prevent it, preventively destroy every single aggressor who seeks to subjugate other nations. Please watch the video.
Volodymyr Zelensky there, the Ukrainian president, speaking from Kiev to the Congress in the United States of America. Now, in a week's time, next Wednesday, the 23rd of March, Chancellor Rishi Sunak delivers his spring statement. Usually billed as a sort of mini-budget, this year's effort will, in my view, be the most important financial speech that we've seen in the House of Commons for almost 15 years, since the global financial crisis of 2008. Why? Because the UK is in the midst of a cost of living squeeze, which was serious before Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine, but the resulting East-West economic war, as the West has moved to block Russian fuel and food exports, has seen prices spiral, with millions of families now feeling the squeeze, and the Chancellor will have to respond. Sunak faces some extremely tough questions ahead of next Wednesday's statement. Should he scrap the impending rise in national insurance for both employers and employees? More help for hard-pressed families and firms as prices surge. But one of the Chancellor's most difficult choices is what to do about defence spending. This conflict's brought into sharp focus the decline in the scale and scope of Britain's armed forces. Accounting for inflation, in fact, defence spending, while set to rise slightly this year, then drops in 2023 and 2024, part of a long-term trend. Back in the mid-50s, 10 years after the Second World War, UK defence spending still accounted for 8% of GDP, or our entire economy. The NHS was then less than half that, at 3% of GDP. Since then, defence spending's plunged as health spending has surged. The NHS budget's now £164 billion, almost 4 times more the £42 billion spent on defence. So will the Chancellor now spend more on the UK's armed forces? If he does, will NHS spending have to fall? These are serious times, and serious times pose very tough choices. And that's our On the Money question today. Can Rishi Sunak afford not to spend more on defence? Now, before we start our On the Money discussion, the former head of the British Army has told GB News that defence spending needs to rise by about £10 billion a year. That's around a 25% increase to counter the threat from Russia. General Lord Dannatt spoke with our security editor, Mark White, ahead of next week's spring statement.
Royal Marines on Arctic exercise alongside their NATO allies. These commando units and their fast attack craft symbolise the kind of rapidly deployable forces the UK Ministry of Defence sees as key to its future defence strategy. But faced with an ultra-aggressive Russia and its invasion of Ukraine, many defence experts are deeply concerned that cuts in force numbers have gone too far. With the Chancellor's spring statement a week away, he faces multiple competing demands. But defence spending has to be a key priority, according to the former head of the Army, who wants to see a £10 billion annual increase to the MOD's budget.
We've probably taken too much risk with our land warfare capability, and what we're now seeing with what the Russians are doing has exposed us to the extent that we really can't match that kind of capability, the sort of capability that the Russians are showing. So there is a very strong case to say we need to increase our defence budget by about £10 billion a year.
In 1990, at the end of the Cold War, the strength of the British Army was 150,000 personnel and 1,200 main battle tanks. Continued reductions in strength over the years left the Army with 82,500 soldiers last year and 227 battle tanks. The latest defence review means a further 10,000 cut in Army numbers over the next few years, with the battle tank strength dropping to just 148. For the strategic planners who thought that tank warfare had had its day, they only need look at Ukraine and the massive armour being deployed by Russia. But that conflict has also shown how small, sophisticated missile systems are proving highly effective. Like Lord Dannatt, the chair of the Commons Defence Select Committee wants an immediate increase in funding of at least 20% and a reversal of plans to cut the number of land forces and tanks.
We've got rid of the Warrior fighting vehicle. This is a lighter tank with a big armament on the top of it. I used it in places like Bosnia. Very, very effective indeed. Brilliant for dismounted infantry as well. Now we're getting rid of all those, replacing that vehicle, this tracked vehicle, with a wheeled vehicle which doesn't have a big gun on the top. Now that would mean that we'd be very vulnerable on the battlefield itself.
In a statement, the Ministry of Defence told us to tackle the growing threats we face, we launched the Army's Radical Future Soldier reforms at the end of last year, which will make the service more agile, lethal and expeditionary. The Ministry of Defence has faced repeated criticism over the years for badly managed and over-ambitious equipment programmes, which have often seen their costs spiralling out of control. Lord Dannatt believes it may be time to look at buying some equipment off the shelf.
It's very good for British industry to design our own equipment, but perhaps sometimes, if there is an urgency about it, we ought to look to see what is there, probably on the American market, and consider holding our nose, if we like, and buying foreign as opposed to building it ourselves.
Okay, fire.
The UK has already doubled its military presence to bolster defences of some of its Eastern European allies, with many NATO countries, including Germany, looking to massively increase their defence spending in the face of a possible new Cold War. The pressure on the British government to follow suit is immense. Mark White, GB News.
And Mark White joins me now for grown-up conversations with people who really know their stuff. That's On the Money. Joining us remotely is Alan Mendoza, director at the Henry Jackson Society. Alan, great to have you with us. And On the Money regular, Justin Urquhart-Stewart, co-founder of Region League, to have this discussion about defence spending. Mark, pretty strong words there from the guy who used to run the British Army.
Yes, I mean, he does think that the cuts have just gone too far in terms of land forces. Looking at what is unfolding in Ukraine, it's clear that that traditional land battle is still very much part of the doctrine of Russia, a much more aggressive Russia in terms of how the West would see it going forward. So there's a recalibration that is going on in NATO, and governments that are part of NATO are having to look to their own defence spending. As I said, Germany, £100 billion extra. They are now going to invest in their defence spending. Will Britain follow suit? It's an age-old issue, isn't it? I've got a quote for you here that I'm sure you'll appreciate. It's from way back in 1969 from the then Defence Secretary Dennis Healey. Remember him?
I remember him.
On this issue of who should get the share of the Chancellor's spending and the competition between education and housing and schools, that they should get prioritised over defence. He said, once we cut defence expenditure to the extent where our security is imperilled, we have no houses, we have no hospitals, we have no schools. We have a heap of cinders. So emotive, strong stuff, but him, from his point of view, putting forward this proposition, his belief that defence has to be the top priority of any government. And if you obviously don't put the money in defence, then you do so at the risk of the nation, obviously.
Back in the day when chancellors used to be people who once ran tank regiments, as Dennis Healey did. Alan Mendoza, let's put the question directly to you. You're welcome to the show, Alan. Thanks for your patience. Can Rishi Sunak afford not to increase defence spending?
Clearly he can't. I mean, you can see the impact of the Russian invasion across Europe as countries scurry to increase their defence spending, finally realising that all these years of cuts, all these years of believing we can run national security on the cheap, have been proven completely wrong. Now, this was apparent, obviously, to everyone who understood what was really going on in global affairs. But it's quite obvious now that with this latest invasion, the idea that we can go back to a 1990s style, everything's going to be rosy policy is gone, and we do indeed have to find more money.
Justin, pulling out to the big picture, you saw that pretty incredible graph that we prepared of defence spending plunging as a share of GDP since the mid-50s, and NHS spending completely eclipsing it. Is it oversimplifying to say this is a battle between the NHS and defence?
No, what you've actually really got to look at is where are you going to put all your money here? We've had a defence holiday since the USSR collapsed, and you can see that throughout the whole of Europe. And so, yes, we are lagging behind because it was a very easy thing to do. And, of course, there's nothing like good popular votes to actually say, of course, it's got to go to schools and education and healthcare. But no. Unless you defend your realm, you don't have a realm. So that's what you've got to start with. Also, put the amount being spent into perspective. That is actually round about, slightly less, the amount we pay on interest on our debt every year.
The 42 billion quid, yeah.
And so, it is, when you say billions, put it into perspective. We need to be able to spend more on this, and we have before, plus the fact defence is profitable if it's done properly. The expertise and technology that we've had over the years, and sadly been sold away, a lot of the intellectual property we've seen in developments, sadly, we should have actually had more time to invest in that ourselves.
Justin makes a good point, doesn't he, Mark? There are jobs in defence, there's industry in defence, there's research and development in defence, there are exports, national prosperity in defence spending.
There are, but there's a flip side to that as well, in that the procurement programmes that the Ministry of Defence have embarked on over the years have often really resulted in much more expenditure than was initially envisaged. Delays to those programmes as well, because often the more complex programmes, they're long lead items. They take a lot of time in the research and development and the production of these defence equipment, whichever particular piece of equipment that is. During that time, you've got the generals saying, oh yeah, but I want it to do this now, so they've got to recalibrate, and they've got to then work on making that piece of defence equipment even more relevant. And in doing that, the price spirals out of control. It's delayed beyond what was initially envisaged. And that is resulting in a black hole in defence spending that we've seen over the years as well. So what I thought was interesting in what General Lord Dannatt said was that maybe we need, with some items, to hold our nose a bit and actually buy off the shelf from the likes of the Americans.
Given the complications of defence procurement.
Who've already done all the research, development and produced it, and it's there at a fixed price that you can take. Maybe some things, of course, you leave to national defence, shipbuilding, for instance. You need that national shipbuilding capability, but some other things, perhaps, you can buy off the shelf.
Alan Mendoza, let's give the last word to you, if we may. Rishi Sunak, he's a pretty young man. Doesn't mean he can't be a good chancellor, of course. He's a very bright man. But he doesn't even remember the world before the Berlin Wall fell. I mean, he probably doesn't even remember when Dennis Healey was giving speeches.
Well, yes, I'm sure he does remember when Dennis Healey was making speeches, but the reality is, even if you're not around at those times, you can clearly look at and understand the history of conflict, the history of what's happened with the West, with NATO, with originally the Soviet Union, what's happened since. And when things change, as they have done in the last 3 weeks, when your world is rocked, surely any sensible politician will go and study up on the lessons of the past to make sure they are not repeating the failures of the past and instead looking at the successes. Let's not forget, the Cold War period was a huge success for the West in the sense that we stood down the Soviet aggression. We did so by spending money on defence. We held our line, and as a result, eventually the Soviet Union collapsed. If we don't do the same now, we will be the ones who will be in danger of collapse, not aggressors, potential aggressors coming for us.
Alan Mendoza, the Henry Jackson Foundation, thank you for joining me today, and also to Mark White, GB News security editor, and indeed Justin Urquhart-Stewart. Sorry the conversation was a little bit squeezed. This is On the Money with me, Liam Halligan. Coming up, today's Money Talks interview is with Monica Lagerkrantz, the woman with big opinions on how directors and CEOs should be managing their time and their teams. But first, the GB News headlines with Tamsin Roberts.
Liam, thank you. It's 1:33. Here are the headlines from the GB Newsroom. Foreign Secretary Liz Truss has confirmed the British-Iranian aid worker Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe will be reunited with her family later today. Fellow British-Iranian Anousheh Ashuri, who was also detained in Iran, is returning also. Boris Johnson's tweeted in the last half hour, also confirming the news. Miss Zaghari-Ratcliffe was arrested in Tehran in April in 2016 and later convicted by an Iranian court for plotting to overthrow the government. She strongly denies the allegations. Parts of a possible peace deal between Russia and Ukraine are close to being agreed as negotiations to end the conflict continue. It follows shelling by Moscow overnight, with air raid sirens heard in several cities across Ukraine. Meanwhile, authorities in the besieged city Mariupol say Russian forces have reportedly taken control of a hospital with over 400 civilians, patients and staff inside. This morning, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says some aspects for agreements with Ukraine were close to being agreed. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said peace negotiations must lead to a fair deal for his country. The Prime Minister says there's no way Ukraine will join NATO anytime soon. It comes as President Zelensky says NATO has no intention of accepting his country. The UK's Defence Secretary Ben Wallace is meeting with his NATO counterparts today to discuss Russia's invasion. Earlier, Boris Johnson said the UK will continue to support Ukraine. The journalist who protested on Russian state TV against the invasion of Ukraine says she's extremely concerned for her safety. Marina Ovsyannikova ran onto the set of the network's live news show last week, holding a sign reading, "Don't believe propaganda, they're lying to you." She says she has no plans to flee Russia and hopes she won't face criminal charges. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Don't go anywhere, it's back to On the Money in just a moment.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
And welcome back to On the Money. It's 1:37. Now, if you thought art was all about paintings and sculptures, think again. So-called non-fungible tokens, or NFTs, are a booming business. They're a way of owning a digital piece of art or a digital image. And Europe's first NFT gallery is opening in London a week today. Our reporter Alice Porter went to try and find out what it all means.
NFTs are shaking up the art world. The viral video of Charlie Bit My Finger
Charlie!
sold for £500,000. And this digital artwork sold for a record £50 million. But are you still confused about what NFTs actually are?
Most of us have heard of the Mona Lisa. You may have a print of the painting at home, but there's only one original Mona Lisa. And NFTs work in the same way. They allow people to own the one-of-a-kind asset, but instead of it being something concrete like a painting, it's something digital, like a meme or a tweet. And if you own the original, then you could make some serious money on it.
Qantas will be Europe's first NFT advisory gallery, and one of the founders has personal experience of the money which can be made on NFTs.
I was very lucky in that, when I first started getting into cryptocurrency and then with NFTs coming onto the scene, I was a relative early adopter there as well. And just because of the success of those, I've been able to put a bit of money aside for my first property, the deposit for it. So, these little digital items, little small pieces of art that aren't physical, tangible objects, there's a real demand for it.
There have been some pretty bleak assessments that the majority of NFTs will be completely worthless in a few years' time. I mean, are they just a gimmick? Is this just a fad?
The market itself, like I said, is relatively saturated at this point, I think. So we're seeing more and more sort of brands and corporations enter the scene with large backings, and galleries who are, instead of an individual artist now going into the NFT space and making some money from it, it's harder for them to do that, so they're seeking out galleries to get represented.
With the British Museum currently selling NFTs, they've clearly become mainstream. It's now a $40 billion industry, but with no regulation, NFTs can be risky. Last year, a collector was duped into paying £244,000 for a fake Banksy artwork advertised through his official website.
There have been issues already in the space. We've seen some bad actors, and so it is important to protect the consumer, the individual retail investor, and we're very supportive of that. We think the sooner regulation comes into the sector, then the more capital can come into the space and the more the sector can develop.
The idea of buying something which isn't a real object may be off-putting to some, but others find NFTs an exciting way of owning a small piece of our digital world. Alice Porter, GB News.
Alice Porter there on NFTs. Who knew? Charlie can bite my finger any time for a few million quid. Now, as energy prices rise, many families face their own tough choice between heating and eating, not least pensioners. Households with smart meters could be told that their bills will rise and fall depending on what time of day they actually use energy. With more than 24 million smart meters in British homes, this is clearly an important issue, as our North East of England reporter Rachel Sweeney has been finding out.
Households could soon see the price of electricity rise and fall in real time. Suppliers will bring in surge pricing for customers with smart meters. The technology will register electricity usage every 30 minutes. It's currently an opt-in choice.
The data will determine the most popular times for energy usage, and then pricing will change throughout the day. Those using energy at popular times or peak times will end up paying more than those able to adjust their lifestyles to use energy off-peak.
Energy expert Ian Henderson from Boiler Plan UK in Northumberland says some will benefit greatly, but others will be hit hard.
If consumers use them correctly
and they set the washing machine, tumble dryer, dishwasher, electric car charging at the off-peak times, great. The challenge I see is potentially for working families who come in the evening at the peak times, and they have to use energy when the peak tariffs are on. So heating their homes could become a problem if they have to heat the homes all of the time during peak times.
Parents Kimberly and Rob from Durham agree.
You're going to watch the television when you're not at work, but when you're awake, so that's mostly going to be mornings before you go to work and evenings when you're back in. That's also going to be the time when you're cooking dinner. It's going to be the time when you want your heating on. I think for us, if I was going to choose the things that I might do overnight, maybe I'd put my slow cooker on overnight where it's off peak, but that doesn't use a lot of energy anyway. I certainly wouldn't put my heating on overnight rather than in the daytime, because that just wouldn't work for me. That only works if you've got storage heaters. And, maybe I could do some washing at night, but it might mean me staying up late and getting up early in the morning, which I don't think is really practical when you've got a really busy lifestyle, when you're working full time, when you've got children. I don't think it will make a lot of difference to us.
Peter Thorpe from North Tyneside Carers Centre says families with young carers will struggle to adjust.
Very challenging and difficult because carers get used to routines, and sometimes they have to have things done at the certain times of the day, medication given or getting out of bed. There's different challenges for the cared for, so it can vary. So most of our young carers have that routine and like to know in advance about what they can do when.
Despite criticism, energy regulator Ofgem says families could save money, adding that this major system upgrade is a significant milestone on Britain's path to net zero. Scottish Power, EDF and Octopus are backing surge pricing. They say this will give customers an opportunity to save money. The system is expected to launch by 2025. Rachel Sweeney, GB News.
Rachel Sweeney there. Time now for my daily interview series, Money Talks. And today I'm joined by Monica Lagerkrantz, the co-founder and CEO of BoardClick. That's a software platform which evaluates boards of directors, CEOs and management teams. Monica's got years of experience of corporate headhunting, that is, searching for senior staff. But she felt that during the search and hiring process, lots of valuable data and feedback was being wasted. And that's why she set up her business, BoardClick, in 2018. So here she is to talk about her business, about boardroom bust-ups and the search for top corporate talent. It's Monica Lagerkrantz, my latest guest on Money Talks. Monica, great to have you with us. Thanks for coming into the Money Talks studio. Now, you're well known in the sphere of headhunting. You've worked for some of the big corporate headhunters. A lot of my viewers won't know what headhunting is. It sounds a bit gory. Just tell us what it is briefly.
Okay, you really look for the best leaders, the top leaders, and you go hunting, and you do that very selectively, and you know always what you look for. So you have sort of a map, you can say. And it's not about recruitment, it's really about pinpointing the profiles, the leaders you really want to speak to.
So it's like a very, very, very sophisticated corporate dating agency, because you're having to approach people who are already in some quite big, important jobs.
Absolutely.
And if their colleagues knew they were being approached, stock markets might start going bananas and so on. So there's lots of intrigue, there's lots of skill. But as you say, you learn an awful lot about the people involved, even if you don't end up hiring them for a particular post, right?
Right, totally. So, of course, and so you become sort of a data mining place yourself. And you know a lot about people, you get to know a lot about businesses. And I have to say, you also get sort of influenced by all these great and interesting people you speak to.
So we have many entrepreneurs here on The Money in this Money Talk slot, and it's great to have you with us today. I always ask entrepreneurs, what made you an entrepreneur? You had a fantastic job. I won't mention it, but you worked for really the top headhunters in Europe, really, and you were a very senior and well-known person. couldn't you have just stayed there? You had a nice job, a nice salary. What made you want to risk your reputation above all, but also your livelihood by striking out on your own?
I could definitely have stayed, and most of my colleagues are still there. I have been all my life an entrepreneur without really knowing it, because I was that already when I was a headhunter with these large firms. So, but then after a number of years, I spotted this opportunity. I like to improve things.
Yeah.
And I noticed certain things in business and with people in business that made me think this could be done much better. And I can't refrain from going that path when I spot it. So, and I also like to do challenging things, you know. I like challenges.
So when you were engaged in these searches for senior executives, men and women across all different sectors, finance or manufacturing or the arts or public sector, whatever it was, you'd learn lots and lots about people that might not be instantly relevant. So what does BoardClick do to kind of hoover up all that often confidential information? How do you then make that available in a way that doesn't breach the confidences upon which your business depend?
Yeah, so...
Sorry, I like asking tough questions.
It's a long question as well. So BoardClick, in the first place, BoardClick is an analytics platform that enables CEOs and boards to build better companies, sustainable companies. And what I noticed was that we all, as headhunters, we look for the best talent, top talent, the best leaders, the greatest and the best. And but then when you have all these fantastic, most often fantastic people in place, I picked up so many, actually too many comments from these professionals that made me think that if only all of this would come in light and would be known to the owners, to the chairman, to the CEO, there would be much more value created, basically. So that's why I created BoardClick. And it's not about breaching confidentiality in any way. It's like having something now in the market that it's much better than what it used to be, because adding data, adding technology to what we used to do, consulting in the boardroom, does really give businesses and owners much more value. And it's time efficient, it's cost efficient, it's fact-based, and it's all about transparency in business these days. And with data and technology and a platform like BoardClick, you offer transparency to the very top, and it's important to know and understand that you set the tone from the top in businesses.
Now, you've worked a lot across different countries in Europe and elsewhere, Monica, but most of your professional life has been, I think it's fair to say, focused on the UK. What do you think about the amount of corporate talent we've got here in the UK, both homegrown, if you like, and imported? People have come from all over the world to work, not just in London, of course, but in Manchester, Sheffield, our big cities, up in Scotland and Wales too. How do you judge the level of corporate talent we've got here in the UK? What can we do to improve our business leadership?
Wow.
There's lots of people who don't like their boss, you know? A lot of people don't like their boss.
To improve, I think you have very good talent, as all countries. Probably encouraging people to go for jobs and positions that they are very passionate about. I always believe, and I'm convinced, you do a better job if you're passionate. So align the jobs, I mean the offers, and also from the people's perspective, that they go for positions that they are really passionate about. I think then you create much more value. But it's also a fact in the UK, as everywhere else, that the power is moving from the employer to the employees. So being a young, ambitious, not only young, but everyone, by the way, today you really have the power. So, and that's why the boardroom is full of discussions about how to retain talent and how to attract talent, retain the ones we want to retain. And so I think the power is already there. I mean, in the UK as everywhere else.
Last question, Monica. So somebody I know well, Helena Morrissey's a well-known female financier. She's been heavily involved with fund management in her career. She's now in the House of Lords. She's campaigned for many years for more women to be on boards. That's clearly improved enormously, certainly in the FTSE 100, the leading sort of 100 UK-listed firms, the biggest firms anyway. Do you think our boardrooms are diverse enough? Clearly there's more female representation. We're working on getting more ethnic representation. Have we got enough socio-economic representation? Or is, at the very top, is the UK, when it comes to corporate leadership, is it still a bit of a closed shop?
I think it's both, to be really honest. I think diversity is great, but then I mean diversity of mind.
Indeed.
Absolutely.
Couldn't agree more.
Because that gives
an experience.
The debate. Yeah, it gives a good debate before you make decisions. So if you have it enough in the UK, I think partly, but it could definitely improve, as in all countries. But then again, diversity of minds.
We fully agree. Monica Lagercrantz, fantastic to talk to you, and good luck with Board Click. I'll be watching what happens, and you're welcome here on the show. Thanks for being my latest guest on Money Talks.
Thanks.
That was Monica Lagercrantz. She's the CEO and founder of Board Click, and my latest Money Talks guests. Lots and lots of Money Talks encounters on my Money Talks podcast, on the GB News YouTube channel and app. Now, lots of you emailing in about our earlier discussion on defence spending. Ricky said, we'll fund defence better if we look at where we send our money. We should be funding our country more. Henry says, our defence does need more money, but it should go to the Navy and RAF. Ukraine has shown that tanks are not as good compared to other military weapons. And Jack's emailed gbviews@gbnews.uk and said, we're a tiny island and we need to be able to protect ourselves. There should be no more delusional thinking that there will not be another war. There will always be a deranged leader, like Putin say, and it will be too late to worry about it when there are invaders on our shores. And Paddy is a former soldier. This isn't new, he says. This is history on a repeating loop. We found ourselves short of troops and equipment before World War I, World War II, and many other wars. I think the thing we learn from history is that politicians never learn from history. And Colin got in touch to say British defence spending will be a total waste of money and £10 billion will make no difference, as Russia has far greater defence capability. We should concentrate on improving relations with Russia as well as with China. Thanks so much for sending in your thoughts, emails and tweets. You are the main part of this show. Always want to hear from my GB News viewers here on The Money. That's all we've got time for today. Thanks for joining me. We've had a good discussion about defence spending, and we'll be back tomorrow with more economics, business and consumer news. This is GB News. I'm Liam Halligan, and that was On The Money.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A wet day for many of us. Brightest skies will be towards the northwest, and it will be cold tonight as the rain clears east. A number of weather fronts are crossing the country through the rest of the day. This one's brought rain to the northwest earlier. It's pushing into England and Wales now, and this front, moving up from the south, will bring the more heavy and persistent wet weather that we're expecting across central